At the charity gala I helped organize, in front of 300 guests, I got down on one knee, and he laughed. Not nervously, not because he was overwhelmed. He laughed like I'd just asked him to do stand-up. And then he turned to his influencer friend who had her phone out, of course, and said, "Zoom in on her face. This is going to be gold." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even blink. I looked at him, smiled once, and stood up. See, everyone thought I was about to fall apart, that I'd become some tragic punchline, just another woman humiliated by a man who mistook cruelty for power. They were wrong. Because what no one knew, what he never figured out, is that I don't vanish.
My
name is Harper. I'm 34. I live in New York City and work as the chief financial officer at a private equity firm most people couldn't afford to walk into. I wasn't handed this life. I wasn't born with a silver spoon or even a full plate. I grew up bouncing between foster homes, built everything I have from grit and spreadsheets, and learned early on that the most dangerous people are the ones who wear charm like a mask.
And Logan, he wore that mask well.
We met almost 3 years ago at a fintech conference in Chicago. I was there to speak on a panel. He was there running brand campaigns for a SaaS company that was trying a little too hard to look revolutionary. We crossed paths in the VIP lounge. He offered me a drink I didn't ask for, made a joke about my keynote title, and managed to be both smug and smooth in the span of 30 seconds. I should have known. But the truth, I was tired. Tired of men who either resented my ambition or tried to compete with it. Logan felt different, confident without being pushy, witty without the usual insecurity behind it. We had chemistry, sure, but it was the kind of chemistry that felt curated, designed. He told me he respected women like me, driven, unapologetic, sharp, said he was tired of people who coasted on their looks or family names. That line, it hooked me, because I wanted to believe it. The relationship moved fast. Dinners turned into weekends, weekends into vacations, and within 6 months, he had a drawer at my place and a toothbrush next to mine. We looked like the power couple people liked to root for. My friends called him low-key handsome. His followers called us goals. But behind the Instagram filters and business dinners were moments. Small ones, sharp enough to leave marks if you weren't paying attention. Like the way he'd dismiss my work, wins with a smirk, and say, "They probably just needed a woman in that seat." Or how he'd introduce me to people as scary smart. But don't worry, she's harmless outside the boardroom. I told myself it was his way of navigating his own insecurities, that it wasn't personal. I told myself a lot of things. Because here's the problem: when you've built your whole life on logic, you think you can analyze your way out of emotional red flags. And I tried. I really did. I planned that proposal down to the minute. The ring custom designed. The setting a rooftop gala tied to a nonprofit we both supported. I even coordinated with the lighting crew to spotlight the moment when I'd ask him to build a future together. That moment became the one thing I wish I could erase.
But I'm not here to tell you a sad story.
I'm here to tell you what came after. Because humiliation might have been the opening act, but what followed, that was the real performance.
And trust me, you're going to want to hear how I turned a viral takedown into something a little more permanent.
Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you built your life around? Someone you believed was in your corner, only to realize they were cheering for your downfall? If yes, then this story is for you. So like this video, drop a comment, share your story, and subscribe, because I promise you, this revenge, it's not loud. It's surgical. Let's begin. So, how did I end up on one knee at a rooftop gala, holding a custom-cut diamond while the man I loved turned me into a punchline? Let me take you back. Because if you're going to understand the storm, you have to know what the weather looked like before it hit. Logan and I met just under 3 years ago. I was speaking at a fintech conference in Chicago panel on post-pandemic capital strategy. Not exactly light material. I remember walking off stage, exhausted but riding that post-speech adrenaline, when he approached me like he already knew I'd say yes to talking. He had this polished look, well-tailored, but just casual enough to avoid looking like he was trying. He offered me a drink and complimented my data set from the panel. Said something about how it cut through the usual consultant fluff. I laughed, which surprised me. He was charming, in that slippery, careful kind of way. He wasn't intimidated by my position. That was rare. And that was dangerous. We started slow. Professional conversations turned personal. We kept running into each other at events. And then one night, after a gala in Midtown, he kissed me in the back of a cab. It should have been a red flag that he didn't ask. But back then, I didn't call boundary crossing what it was. The thing about Logan was, he always made you feel like he was doing you a favor just by choosing to show up. He wasn't loud, not the kind of guy who yelled or lost control. No, Logan weaponized subtlety. A raised eyebrow here, a condescending smile there. He'd say things like, "You're intense, but in a good way," or, "It's cute how you still believe in integrity and finance." I know how that sounds, but when you're in it, when you're being slowly boiled instead of tossed in the fire, you don't see the danger until you're already burned. Still, I defended him. To friends, to myself. We looked good together. We were on the guest lists, got invited to speak at panels, landed in the right rooms. He started calling us the next big merger. I told myself that meant something. The thing is, Logan was always branding everything, including me. And I let him? We made it 2.5 years, somewhere between co-hosting charity events and designing couple content. I lost track of the red flags. Or maybe I just folded them into the aesthetic and called it modern romance. My friends tried. One night, my best friend Lena pulled me aside and said, "I don't like how he talks to you when you're not looking." I brushed it off. Told her Logan was just guarded. Said he respected me in ways other men never had. What I didn't say was that I needed it to be true. Because if it wasn't, then I'd spent years loving someone who never actually saw me. And that kind of miscalculation, it cuts deep when your whole career is based on being the one who never misses a detail. So I doubled down, told myself love was messy, that all relationships required compromise, that Logan's jabs weren't personal, that his silence during important moments was just his way of processing. But deep down, I knew. I knew when he skipped my birthday dinner to fly out for a last-minute collab shoot with an influencer I didn't know. I knew when he told a room full of investors that I was the numbers genius. But don't ask her to pick a paint color. And I definitely knew when he brushed off my mention of marriage like I'd asked him to invest in a pyramid scheme. Still, I proposed. I can't explain that decision in a way that will make sense to everyone. But if you've ever clung to the version of someone you fell for long after they stopped resembling it, you'll understand. I wasn't proposing to Logan, the man who laughed in my face. I was proposing to the idea I'd built, the hope, the history, the possibility that maybe, just maybe, I hadn't wasted years chasing someone who only saw me as a ladder rung. That's why I went big. Because I thought if I just created the perfect moment, if I made it beautiful enough, meaningful enough, maybe he'd see me again. Maybe he'd remember. So I spent 2 months planning the proposal down to the second. I coordinated it with the charity gala we co-chaired every year, booked the rooftop venue overlooking the skyline, had the lighting team install a soft white spotlight to hit the stage at exactly 10:45, ordered a custom ring in emerald cut, east-west setting, because he once offhandedly mentioned hating basic shapes. I listened, even when he wasn't talking to me directly. That was my mistake. I thought attention meant love. I thought showing up meant partnership. I thought silence was patience. I was wrong. And as you'll see, That miscalculation set off a chain of events that would destroy more than just my pride. But I wasn't broken. Not yet. Because the night of the proposal, that was the beginning, not the end. The night of the gala arrived like a storm I didn't see coming, quiet at first, then deafening. It was the end of December, 2 days before New Year's, and the city was lit up like it was trying to outrun the darkness. The rooftop had been transformed. Twinkling lights framed the skyline. Soft music played through the sound system, and the staff wore black velvet to match the aesthetic. Everyone showed up dressed to impress. Donors, executives, influencers, friends from both of our circles. Logan was late, which wasn't new. But that night, every minute felt heavier. Every glance from a guest was a silent question, where is he? He arrived 30 minutes after the program started, walked in like he owned the place. Black tux, slight smirk, that familiar, curated charm. He kissed me on the cheek and whispered, "You look stunning." Then he turned and immediately started greeting people like I wasn't even standing there. Still, I smiled, nodded, kept it together, because that's what I always did. I thought, he's just overwhelmed. He doesn't like attention. It's fine. At 9:45, I gave a short speech thanking the donors and guests. I stood beneath the spotlight we'd installed right where I planned to propose, and the applause was warm. I saw people raise glasses, heard someone say, "Power couple energy." I almost believed it. Logan stood off to the side, chatting with one of the board members, barely looking up. At 10:30, I slipped away for a minute to grab the ring box from the event coordinator's station. It was small, black, elegant, just like the stone inside. I tucked it into my palm and took a breath. This was it. The moment. I walked back onto the platform as the music dimmed. The lights softened, just like I planned. The skyline shimmered behind me. Someone handed me a mic. I motioned for Logan to join me, and he did slow, casual, like he didn't really understand what was happening. I started talking. About time. About partnership. About building something meaningful. About him. People began to realize what was happening. Phones came out. A few gasps. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, is this a proposal?" And then, as the final line left my lips, "Logan, will you marry me?" I dropped to one knee, opened the box, and looked up at the man I'd spent nearly 3 years building a life with. He laughed. Full, loud, disrespectful. He didn't flinch, didn't hide it, didn't even try to soften the blow. He laughed like I was a joke. Like the last 2.5 years were one long punchline. People around us froze. The rooftop went still. He turned to his influencer friend, yes, the same one I'd always had a weird feeling about, and said, "Please tell me you got that." Zoom in on her face. She nodded, phone already aimed. And then he looked back at me and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Seriously? You thought this was that kind of relationship?" That was the moment. The crack in my spine, the sound that splintered everything. I stood up slowly, ring box still in my hand. He smiled like I'd handed him a win. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful, it was suffocating. People didn't know what to do. A few laughed awkwardly, thinking it was a joke. Someone clapped once, then stopped. Logan looked around like he was soaking up the attention. I looked at him and I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I didn't plead or explain. I turned, walked off the platform, and left him standing there alone under the lights. By the time I made it to the elevator, my phone was already buzzing. Notifications, mentions, messages, texts from friends, colleagues, even a board member. The video was up. His friend had uploaded it within minutes. Tagged him. Captioned it when she takes it too seriously. I should have felt humiliated. And for a second, I did. But then, I felt something colder. Cleaner. clearer. It wasn't sadness, or rage, or confusion. It was clarity. I had just handed this man every opportunity to prove he saw me as a partner, and instead, he used it to turn me into content. That's not love. That's control. And control. I know how to dismantle that. So while Logan smiled for the cameras, I began building something of my own. Not a speech, not a defense, not an apology. A plan. Because the thing about people like Logan, they forget women like me don't need to raise our voices to burn down their houses. We just have to light the match and walk away. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was heartbroken, not because I was crying into some dramatic playlist, or pacing the floor like a woman scorned. I didn't sleep because my mind was awake, sharp, clear, cold. While he celebrated online clout, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the ring box, flipping it open, then closed, over and over, like a metronome marking the final seconds of what used to be my future. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from my firm's media rep, 2 emails from board members, and a half-dozen texts from friends asking if I was okay. But the message that stopped me completely was from someone I barely knew. Talia, one of the executive assistants in Logan's office. We'd met maybe twice. Her message was short. Harper, I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that. He planned it. I stared at it for a long time before typing back. What do you mean? What she sent next. That's when everything unraveled. Screenshots, audio clips, internal Slack messages, even a screen recording of a private Instagram story Logan had posted weeks before the gala. He was laughing, holding a wine glass, telling his friend, "She thinks this is going to be some fairy tale proposal. Wait till you see how I flip it." My stomach dropped. This wasn't just cruelty. This was a setup. He knew. He'd known for weeks. About the proposal. About the ring. About the moment I'd planned down to the second. And he chose to turn it into a spectacle. Worse, he wasn't alone. His influencer friend, the one who filmed everything, had helped him script the caption ahead of time. They'd rehearsed his facial expressions, discussed lighting angles, even joked about background music. It wasn't spontaneous. It was staged et pied. And suddenly, I realized I wasn't just dealing with a narcissist. I was dealing with a man who thought pain was content, who believed that if he could spin the narrative fast enough, no one would look beneath the surface. He was wrong. Because I don't fight fire with fire. I fight with facts, with silence, with strategy. So I got to work. I opened my laptop and created 3 folders. One for legal, one for financial, one for media. I wasn't going to lash out. I wasn't going to scream online or post some revenge reel with cryptic captions. That's what he wanted. He wanted chaos, a reaction, a scene. But I've built my career in rooms where being underestimated is the default, where silence is seen as surrender, when really it's preparation. So I started documenting everything. Screenshots, messages, event timelines, contracts. I cross-checked the footage from the live stream with the timestamps in his private story. I flagged every brand he had ever collaborated with and matched them to the campaign posts on his feed. And then I made a list. Every partnership, every investor, every professional tie he'd leveraged using my name. Because make no mistake, he'd used me. He'd name-dropped me in meetings, introduced himself as my other half during networking events, and bragged that we were a modern brand in the making. He had positioned himself as the face. But I was the infrastructure. And without me, he had nothing. So, while he soaked up internet fame, I quietly reached out to a friend of mine, a PR specialist who handles high-net-worth crises. I didn't give her all the details, just asked, "Can you help me shape a narrative that doesn't make me look bitter?" She said, "Absolutely. But Harper, is this going to get ugly?" I said, "No. It's going to get quiet. And then I smiled for the first time since the rooftop. Because for once, I didn't feel like I'd lost. I felt ready.
Over the next week, I moved like a ghost. While people online debated if I was too much or too emotional for proposing, I was reviewing NDAs and forwarding footage to a legal contact who owed me a favor.
Logan didn't know. Not yet. He still thought he'd won. He posted a carousel of his most iconic moments from the gala. The last photo, me on one knee, slightly blurry, framed by the lights. The caption, "Sometimes the story writes itself." It had over 200,000 likes in under a day. But beneath the applause, the comments had started to shift. People were asking questions. Why does it look like the camera was ready? Why is she the one proposing if he said it wasn't serious? Was this planned? The seed was planted. And once you plant doubt, it grows. I didn't comment, didn't repost, didn't so much as whisper a denial. Because I didn't have to. He'd given me everything I needed. Now all I had to do was use it. Revenge doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives dressed in silence, wearing a tailored suit, holding a stack of receipts. And I had all of them. The moment I realized Logan had turned my proposal into a performance, I stopped being the woman he left humiliated on a rooftop. I became the woman who would ruin him without raising her voice. The first step, letting the internet do what it does best, ask questions. I didn't have to plant rumors. I just had to feed the facts to the right people. I sent an anonymous email to 2 mid-size finance podcasts. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet tip with links to Logan's video, some time-stamped screen grabs, and a polite little question at the end. Has anyone checked the metadata? That was it. By the next morning, both hosts had gone live with back-to-back episodes titled, "Was It All Staged and Proposal or PR Stunt?" Within 48 hours, the tone around Logan shifted. The guy who had been praised for owning his truth suddenly became the man who humiliated a successful woman for likes. I watched it unfold from my apartment, sipping coffee, wearing a hoodie, while Logan posted increasingly defensive captions about not owing anyone a story. But stories write themselves when you lie to everyone at once, and his was crumbling fast. Next, I focused on the brands. Logan had always been proud of his partnerships. He boasted about them constantly: smartwatch companies, startup collabs, even a speaking engagement for a tech accelerator. I pulled a list from his own posts, built a spreadsheet, and cross-referenced it with the screenshots Talia had sent me. You'd be amazed how many brand managers forget to scrub private messages. One of them showed Logan joking, "Can't wait to tank this proposal. Watch me go viral." Another a photo of the ring box on my dresser, taken weeks before the gala. The caption, "She's serious. This is going to be premium content." I packaged those messages into a quiet dossier and sent it off to each brand's media contact professionally, respectfully, with no direct accusations. Just a subject line, "Brand integrity inquiry regarding current ambassador." I didn't sign my name. I didn't need to. By the end of the week, 3 brands had unfollowed him. 2 removed him from active campaigns. And 1 issued a public statement. It read, "We do not support content that involves deception or emotional exploitation for entertainment. We have paused all partnerships with Logan Thomas pending review." That hit harder than any tweet could have. And Logan knew it. He posted a story that night, just text on a black background. "People will twist anything." I didn't reply. Why would I? I was too busy setting the next phase in motion. I reached out to the ethics committee of a startup founders council Logan had recently joined. He'd made a big deal about being accepted, said it validated his work in the creator economy. I sent them a concise memo detailing his public behavior, the planned nature of the viral proposal incident, and how he'd monetized it. Attached were screenshots, links, and an outline of the timeline formatted exactly how compliance officers liked it. A week later,
His profile disappeared from the council's member directory.
Another win. But I wasn't done. Because while the world whispered about whether Logan had gone too far, I wanted to make sure the people he truly respected, the tech elite, knew the truth.
So I called in a favor from a journalist friend who worked for a major business outlet. We'd gone to grad school together. She owed me. I told her everything, on record, with documentation. She ran a piece titled, "The Price of Viral Fame When Personal Lives Become PR Stunts." It didn't name him outright, but it didn't have to. Everyone in our circles knew exactly who it was about. By the time the article hit, Logan had lost over 30,000 followers. And his friend, the one who filmed everything, locked her account and issued a statement claiming she had no idea the moment would go viral. That was a lie. But I didn't need to prove it. Because the damage was done. And still, I stayed silent. No cryptic posts. No TikTok clapbacks. No podcast interviews. Just one quiet photo on my feed, a closed ring box sitting on my windowsill, bathed in morning light. Caption, "Bullet dodged." It went viral in under 2 hours. Not because I said anything scandalous, but because I didn't say anything at all. People filled in the blanks. They always do. And that was my final move. Letting Logan feel the silence he left me in. Letting him realize that the more he tried to control the story, the more control he lost. He tried texting, twice. Once to say, "This has gotten out of hand." And again a few days later, "Can we just talk?" I left him on red. Not out of pettiness, but because there was nothing left to say. He made his choice. I made mine. And my choice was simple. Let him crumble in the ruins he built with his own hands. Let him feel the echo of the applause he chased, long after the crowd had left. There's something strange about watching someone fall apart in slow motion, especially when it's someone who spent so long convincing the world they were untouchable. Logan didn't unravel all at once. No. His downfall was steady, like a house that looked perfect from the outside, until a storm revealed how hollow the foundation really was. And the storm. It wasn't me, not directly. It was truth, proof, silence that left space for people to finally see him clearly. After the business article dropped, everything changed. The comments on his posts, once full of fire emojis and heart-eyed reactions, turned sharp, brutal, even. People weren't just questioning the video anymore. They were analyzing everything. His captions, his smirks, the way the lighting was perfectly angled in every so-called candid clip. One user wrote, "Funny how the camera was rolling before the proposal even happened." Another replied, "This dude's more actor than entrepreneur." It snowballed. I didn't have to lift a finger. The brands that had paused their partnerships quietly made them permanent. Some even pulled entire campaigns offline. One of them deleted every post that featured him, like he'd never been involved. Another replaced him with a female founder in their next ad campaign, one who gave a quote about reclaiming integrity in storytelling. I watched that ad twice, smiled both times. As for Logan, he stopped posting selfies, started sharing vague, dramatic captions on black backgrounds. People always twist the truth. You never really know someone. Silence speaks volumes. He wasn't wrong. Silence does speak. It says, "I have nothing left." One day, I woke up to find he'd archived most of his content. Only 5 posts remained. None of them personal, just brandless, curated shots from years ago, as if he was trying to erase everything recent. But the internet doesn't forget. The video of the rooftop proposal, his laughter, his friend filming, the smirk on his face was still floating on hundreds of accounts, stitched, duetted, debated. Worse for him. The narrative had shifted. When it first went viral, I was the punchline, the woman who read the room wrong, the one who proposed and got rejected. But after the leaks, after the article,
People started calling it what it was: a setup, a betrayal, public humiliation for the sake of content. Some influencers even made videos titled, "This is why women don't propose," or "When your partner sees you as a prop."
They weren't defending me,
They were dismantling him.
and still I stayed quiet.
I didn't comment, didn't explain, didn't even acknowledge it publicly. Not because I didn't care, but because I'd already won. I knew it when I walked into work 2 weeks later, head held high, and saw how people looked at me. Not with pity.
With respect.
Not one person mentioned the video. But one of the firm's partners stopped me in the hallway and said, "By the way, we're reviewing influencer vetting protocols. Thanks for unintentionally inspiring that." And then he winked. It wasn't corporate validation, but it was acknowledgement. Proof that I wasn't the one who lost something that night. He lost control. He lost credibility. He lost the version of himself he'd spent years polishing. But the fallout didn't stop there. His influencer friend Brianna quietly went private on all platforms. She posted a single story: "I didn't know it would go this far. Please stop messaging me." But people kept messaging. Because people remember the ones holding the camera just as much as the ones doing the damage. I heard from a mutual contact that Logan tried pitching a podcast afterward. Something about navigating viral hate or turning pain into platforms. It never got picked up. Apparently, too many producers were afraid of the backlash. Too many brands wanted to keep their distance. And his followers. They kept dropping. 10,000 gone in a week. Then another 15. By the time February rolled around, he'd lost over half his audience. You could almost feel the desperation through the screen. One of his last posts before he went dark was a mirror selfie, shirtless, captioned, "Still standing." The comments. Brutal. "You're standing alone, bro. Should have said no with class, not with a camera crew." I didn't engage. Didn't even watch it in real time. I only saw it when a friend texted me the screenshot with the message, "Girl, he is spiraling."
And maybe he was.
But I wasn't. Because while he tried to hold on to a collapsing narrative, I was living, healing, rebuilding. Quietly. Deliberately. One Saturday, I ran into someone from his old company at a gallery opening. She used to handle their internal communications. We made small talk over overpriced wine. And then, out of nowhere, she said, "You know, people always said he was magnetic. But I never trusted him. Not once. What you did, I wish more women did that." I didn't correct her. I hadn't done anything dramatic. I hadn't dragged him on Twitter or posted a sob story. All I'd done was tell the truth to the right people, in the right way, at the right time. Turns out that's enough. And maybe that's the part he never understood. The most powerful revenge is peace. Not the kind you perform. The kind you live in. No noise, no show, no grand finale. Just calm. Control. Closure. It's been 3 months since that night on the rooftop. 3 months since I dropped to one knee in front of hundreds of people. Since I held out a custom ring to the man I loved. And he laughed like it was the punchline to a joke only he understood. But this isn't a story about heartbreak. Not anymore. Because the truth is, heartbreak didn't destroy me. It revealed me. It stripped away the noise, the image, the expectations. It burned down everything I thought was real. And in the ashes, I found clarity. Logan thought I'd crawl back, maybe not to him, but to the version of myself that made space for men like him, the version that second-guessed, that over-explained, that tried to make other people comfortable, even when it cost me peace. But she's gone. And in her place, a woman who understands the difference between forgiveness and access, between silence and weakness, between peace and performance. See, I used to believe that love could fix anything, That if you showed up enough, stayed patient enough, gave enough, you could build something unbreakable. But I've learned something far more valuable. You can't build something real with someone who needs an audience more than they need a partner. Love isn't a stage. It's a mirror. It shows you who you are and who they are when no one's watching. And Logan, he needed the stage. He needed the applause, the angles, the curated moments. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a performance. And I refused to be part of the act. So I walked. And then I watched quietly as everything he built began to crumble under the weight of his own ego. I didn't have to destroy him. He did that on his own. All I did was stop holding up the parts of his image he couldn't maintain without me. And that was enough. It always is. But if you're listening to this, hoping for some kind of grand twist or cinematic ending, let me offer you something better. Growth. Because the truth is, Logan's downfall wasn't the most important part of this story. It wasn't the articles, or the brand deals he lost, or the followers who turned on him. It was me. The woman who didn't shrink. The woman who didn't scream. The woman who didn't waste energy proving she'd been wronged. I channeled every ounce of betrayal into boundaries, every whisper of doubt into discipline, every scar into strategy. And now I sleep better. Not because everything's perfect, but because I'm not carrying the weight of someone else's poison. I moved apartments, smaller place, but it's mine, quiet, clean, filled with light and stillness, and things that actually belong to me. I even started dating again, not seriously, not yet, but with curiosity. And this time, I'm not ignoring red flags. I'm not excusing condescension or mistaking charisma for character. I'm asking real questions. I'm listening harder. To others, but mostly to myself. And the ring? I sold it. Took the money and bought something I'd been eyeing for over a year but never gave myself permission to splurge on a brand new motorcycle. Matte black, sleek, fast. It's funny. I thought that ring would represent the start of something permanent. Turns out it paid for my freedom. Logan never got it, never will. Last I heard, he was still trying to rebrand, talking about growth and transformation on podcasts that barely hit 300 views. He posted some cryptic quote a week ago, something about people not knowing what they had until it's gone. I didn't respond. Didn't roll my eyes. Didn't feel satisfaction. I felt nothing. Which is how I knew I'd finally healed. Because true healing doesn't look like revenge. It looks like indifference. Like not needing the apology. Like not rewriting the story to make yourself the hero or him the villain. It looks like letting go not to free him, but to free yourself. So if you've ever been there on that rooftop, metaphorically or otherwise, if you've ever stood in front of someone with your heart in your hands and they chose to mock it instead of hold it, let me say this. You are not the punchline. You are not the problem. You are not too much, or too intense, or too emotional, or too ambitious. You were just too real for someone who only knows how to pretend. So stop dimming. Stop editing. Stop auditioning for people who can't see past the spotlight they're trying to live in. You don't need a better script. You need a better audience. And if you take anything from my story, let it be this. The most powerful thing you can ever do is walk away, quietly, completely, without looking back. Let them wonder. Let them spiral. Let them realize too late that the best thing that ever happened to them walked out in heels and never once turned around. If this story hit something deep in you, if you've ever been used, underestimated, or turned into someone's cautionary tale, drop a fire emoji in the comments. Share your story. You're not alone. And if you want more stories like this, raw, real, and honest, don't forget to subscribe. Because sometimes, silence is the loudest victory. And sometimes, the woman who walks away, she doesn't just win. She evolves.